We know that when we get people right, we get business right. So I'd like to welcome you back to my podcast that focuses on 3 areas I specialise in: leadership, performance, and culture. You'll hear my guests talking about their experiences and expertise, and will be providing thought-provoking insights around putting the human factor back into business. Each conversation will be accompanied by a free downloadable guide to save the strain on your memory, and resources that will make it easier to put the great ideas we discuss into action. I'm your host, Lisa, psychologist, psychotherapist, and founder of It's Time for Change, and I thrive on conversations that make a difference. So reach out to me. My details are in the show notes along with the resources. Grab a cuppa, sit back, and enjoy. Today, I'm welcoming Alex Rae, CEO at Wise Investments, to talk about preparedness and possibility. So Alex was kind enough to contribute to the Oxfordshire Business Summit ebook that I pulled together last year. Listeners can find a link to that in the show notes. So I wanted to get her on today to talk a little bit more about what we mean by that. So thank you, Alex, for joining me.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
So, as I just said, in your article, you talked about preparedness and possibility in terms of a lens to look at the future of work. What does that phrase actually mean to you as a leader?
I think it means lots of things, but I've been at Wise for 25 years. So, there's been lots of changes in our industry in those 25 years. And preparedness, I suppose, is about dealing with those changes and how you deal with those changes as maybe a leader, but also in terms of your team and as a business, and how you can cope with those, because we can't be fully prepared for every eventuality in business. And it's not necessarily about, I guess, identifying every single possibility of things that are going to happen in future, but preparing the team, having a team that's confident, feel confident in dealing with things as they come along, perhaps with or without you as the leader giving input, trusting the team to do those things as and when they happen. And I guess longer term preparedness is about kind of, looking at the horizon, what's coming, but thinking about it from like your business point of view, what's important to you, what's just noise, what are the things that are important to you and your team. And also in terms of the team, just talking to people. So, I'm CEO, I've got a management team, we've got, the rest of the team. What does being prepared mean to them? What do they need in terms of running the business, servicing our clients, that kind of thing. So, yeah, it's just lots of layers, I think, to being prepared. But I think overall being open-minded and not panicking. I think
Yeah.
things are always going to come your way. So,
Yeah.
I think that's the key. You just need to deal with things as they come along. I mean, hopefully you have a business where some things are predictable and you know what's coming in the next year or 5 years, but other things will come along, or like in our industry, there's lots of regulatory changes, for example, so we have to be agile
Mm.
to deal with those. But it's about not panicking when those things happen, and having the scope and
Mm.
yeah.
I like that. I like your I mean, it's very sensible. It's a good reminder that we can't predict all the change that's going to happen. So it's about building a resilience so that when stuff does happen that might not have been predicted, as you say, people don't panic. And I really like what you said about people not being then dependent on you. So if
Mm.
something happens, they're not all looking to you as CEO, or if it's another organization, their leader, to determine what needs to happen and how we respond. But people feel able to step into that position of, okay, what does this mean and how do we think about it? And it takes the onus off of the kind of pressure on you to solve it all, which I really like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't have all the answers. I'm never going to. I need my team, and in lots of cases, they will know much more have much more knowledge than I do about certain
Mm.
things that are happening. I mean, I think that's key as a leader. Always hire people that are better than you at things.
Yeah,
Don't be
yeah,
afraid of doing that,
yeah,
because that helps in the long term. I mean, obviously, hopefully you have a CEO. You've got some qualities, which
yeah,
is the reason why you're in that role.
yeah.
But you need really good people in the wider team, and yeah, for them to be able to deal with things as they come along. I mean, as I said, I've been with Wise for 25 years, so we've gone from a fairly small team to now about 40 people, which actually has changed that dynamic a bit. And
Mm.
in some ways, I'm probably less close to some things that are happening. But I have to be able to trust the team to get on with things, get things wrong sometimes. But it's just working together to make sure we do what's best for the business, really.
Yeah, and I think it's about strengthening the belief that that team has in their own ability, isn't it? So,
Absolutely,
like
yeah,
I was talking to someone this morning about a company I worked with whose MD was leaving, and the leadership team were really rocked by that. They were like, "Well, how do we carry on operating the way we've done because we're dependent on you?" And the MD was very conscious about actually doing some work around pulling the team together and helping them understand they are a really strong team and they are resilient. They're not dependent on him. And I think people being able to focus on how people operate as a team and it's not dependent on their leader um,
yeah,
is really really important. I think
yeah,
your the preparedness part is really important to kind of ground people because the too many leaders think kind of oscillate between that sense of optimism for the future and anxiety, and it's like actually what's real, what can we control right now?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, th this goes for whether you're a business that's got, three people in it or 100. It's the same principle. It'll be different stages of this, but it is something as a leader you need to think about
Yeah.
right from the beginning to, and maybe that business will always have three people in it, or maybe it's going to go from, three to 30 or whatever. But, I think those are things that you do
Yeah.
need to think about. I mean,
Yeah.
hopefully if I wasn't it wise, um, they'd miss me in some way, but the business would carry on, which is how it should be.
Exactly.
There are other people there who could take over. I mean, and that's not just for my role. You need that in the whole business,
Yeah.
really.
But that's good
Um,
leadership, which is not about your ego. It's about actually
yeah,
good leader. You should be able to feel you can't be there and actually business will carry on. Obviously, you've got a really
yeah,
important role, but it's
yeah,
not all dependent on you. So
yeah.
let's explore what leaders need to be prepared for, which is um, not just the kind of structural stuff, but the kind of more human stuff. So you're clear that there are huge opportunities ahead, and also that the pace of change can leave people feeling pretty overwhelmed and unsure of their value at times. What risks concern you most for people as work continues to evolve?
I think what concerns me perhaps is uncertainty for people um, that usually creates sort of ripple effects in a business. So, when there's lots of change or things evolve, I mean, we're looking at AI and, that's hybrid working since COVID, lots of change since
Mm,
COVID, hybrid working, all those things. So, I think it's managing that uncertainty for people. And sometimes that's just, having conversations. Sometimes people are imagining things that might not be happening. I mean, we've started using AI and, we did have a few questions to start with. Does that mean when, people are going to lose their jobs?
mm,
And for us, that's not what it was about at all. But maybe as a leader, you just go about your business and you're thinking about all these things you need to do. But you do
yeah,
need to sometimes communicate, fairly simple messages because you just taking it for granted. But actually, um, if you're not part of that project or that work on things evolving, that might feel quite scary and uncertain. So, it's
yeah,
having those conversations with the wider team just to say which, we've done. For us, it's about actually setting the business up so that we can spend more time doing the things that are valued by our clients,
Mm,
and AI can support that rather than it being okay. Well, we're looking to get rid of
mm,
half the
mm.
team,
Yeah.
but people could have jumped to that conclusion, I
Mm,
suppose. But I think it is an increasingly fast pace world, and things move all the time, whether it's in business or I don't know, the economy or just the
mm,
world.
mm.
And yeah, that's scary for people. And people don't particularly like change. So you
No,
have
they
to bring
don't.
people with you on that. And we try and do that, but
Mm.
sometimes it's difficult. But I think the key is to involve people, communicate, and involve people in decisions.
So you said earlier about I like the word you used about ripples,
Mm,
and I think you also said about simple messages being really important, and I think sometimes I think that hits the nail on the head because I think sometimes leaders get so um, consumed by the kind of what needs to happen with the organization where it's going and introducing
mm,
things like AI and so on that they forget what's needed at a very simple level for
mm,
humans to know the information they need and to feel reassured because those ripples of anxiety and the rumors and and misusing our imagination. Our imagination is our most misused resource as humans. So if we don't have information, we will fill that gap with
absolutely.
what we either make up or what we hear from someone else. So
Yeah.
we can't be very aware of those very simple messages and keep that information going in a two-way, I think is super important.
Yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, and I think those the simple messages are what's important. And I think sometimes, or maybe this is just me, but as a leader, you sometimes think that things have to be more complicated than they are, and they
Oh,
aren't always.
massively.
They're very complicated. We're just all most businesses is about people. Or whether that's the people who work in the business or um, providers, people that sell your business something or your clients and we're all pretty similar and people want stability and reassurance and feel safe and valued and they don't have to be very complicated things, I think, to make people feel those things.
No, but it's putting an emphasis on it, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you notice happen when organizations sort of focus on the more business structural side of change and they focus less on the emotional human side of that uncertainty? Have you seen how that kind of shows up?
um, I mean, I guess what happens is that you get a team who, well, you get more people leaving probably, I suppose is what happens, and less happy customers.
Mm,
Um, but people vote with their feet, so, they might not stay, and people are valuable, their knowledge and their expertise and knowledge of your business has built up over time. They're really important to you.
mm,
So, um, yeah, you don't, you want to keep those good people.
yeah. I think you're right. People leave, or performance drops, and it's not because of capability or anything. It's because people aren't feeling safe all of a sudden. That sense of
Yeah.
um, value and safety and familiarity and confidence in what they know as suddenly that's been pulled out from beneath them,
Mm,
and then we know that as humans, our performance drops because we're not no longer in the right headspace.
yeah.
So I guess that brings us on to the responsibility organizations have when leading change. And I really liked what you wrote in your article about you described wise investment as a people first business. So what does emotional and practical support actually look like in day-to-day leadership for you?
I think for me, it's being present as much as possible. So, um, talking to people in the business and listening to what's happening. How are our clients feeling? What are they doing? What are they seeing working? What's not working? Um, and I think that's key, and it's really important to me personally. It's something that's changed over time as we've got bigger, but something I'm now kind of really trying to focus on, just being around and talking to people, finding out what's happening. You just don't know what's going on in people's lives as well outside of work. But also people have really good um, I want to hear what they've got to say about the business and know what's going on in order for me to then go away and think about, the longer term and strategy and that. But um,
But I like that because that goes back to, ties in with what you said earlier about leaders tend to overcomplicate things, and it's about
yeah,
making it simple. And you being present is really clever in terms of informing your strategy, in terms of building relationships and trust, and there's so much good that comes of that. But it's so simple in a way of it's about being present. It's not
yeah,
some complicated new strategy or structure we've got system
yeah,
to introduce.
yeah,
But I think that's a really good point you just demonstrated.
yeah. And just supporting people in there or providing the tools for people to support themselves as well. I mean, we do lots of things for the teams to help them, um, to support them, like, training and
Mm.
um, um, mental health support and all sorts of things. And I think that's really it's an important part of leading a business, I think, to think
Yeah.
about different areas.
And also you did and I know this because I spoke to Lucy who works with you recently. You did some of your guys did the Oxford Half Marathon and
Yeah,
and getting people together to do something that isn't necessarily seen as being work related, but it's people joining together. It's that's developing and strengthening those relationships and nothing kind of beats that sense of team and being able to rely
no,
on each other and yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we do lots of that, and I really value it.
Mm,
And particularly after COVID as well, because we used to be in the office 5 days a week, and we'd all sit together and work together, and you'd go and chat to someone in when you went to get a cup of coffee, and you'd hear all about their life or
mm,
their kids or whatever.
mm,
That happens less now that we're kind of hybrid working, so we're only sort of in the office 2 days a week, and which 2 days is up to each person. So, you might not see some people for a week. So, we have a well-being and a social committee who organises lots of events, like charity events. So, like Oxford Half, as you mentioned, or we're organising a theatre trip at the moment. Got a lady who comes in and does massages, or we'll have training from Oxfordshire Mind, or
mm.
going out for a drink together, but kind of being proactive about it and organising it. And that's the teams have set that up, and we've allocated some budget to that, and
Mm.
we're organising those events. But they're much more important than you think.
They are, and it makes me because one of the things I want to ask you is around how leaders find the balance kind of between momentum because of change is so relentless and it's so there's it feels like we could be head down and just dealing with that and care. So how and I guess it's that balance is, I mean, you've talked about that group who are organising, I mean, what you've just listed sounds absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in terms of how you, as a leader or other leaders at Wise, how they get that balance right between kind of showing that care and also making sure that everyone's going fast enough?
I'm not sure there's anything in particular we're doing. I mean, it is just doing a mixture of all those things and
Mm,
making sure we have someone to go to if your manager, who your manager is, and you can go and speak to them, that I'm available if someone, they know that I'm around and they come and speak to me. For new members of staff in some teams, they have kind of mentors so they can go to someone more experienced so they know, you know.
mm,
But I mean, I think the key there is, I mean, we work in a particularly fast-paced environment. Financial services is um,
yeah.
lots of regulation. It's really important that everyone in the entire business get their day jobs
Mm,
right.
mm,
It would have huge implications if they don't. But I think you can't just, you're going to get better momentum if you take care of people and take time out. So it's sometimes, you think, oh God, we're doing this coaching afternoon for the whole team. We could really all do with just getting on with whatever your, business as
Mm,
usual. I've
mm,
got the posts come in, and it feels like something that is frivolous and we don't need to do this. But actually, you get more time back in the long run. So the
yeah.
momentum actually probably increases by doing these things, because you can't just, you just, that's not how we work as humans. You cannot just, momentum can't just keep on increasing. I mean, it does. It just, we can't get away from the fact that that's the industry we work in, and that it is very high pressured and fast, and things change, and we have to deal with things,
Mm,
tomorrow. Didn't know
mm,
what's going to happen tomorrow.
mm.
Uh,
But you
but
can
it's,
press pause, and I think that's what I'm hearing you saying, and I love what you're saying, Alex, because it's is about the relationships and it is about the care. And sometimes I think people get the wrong idea when we're talking about kind of caring for your workforce, and think people think that means removing challenge. And it's not about trying to prevent people from having a challenging time at work, because challenge is part of growth and moving forward and dealing with uncertainty and change. But it's about building people's capacity and making sure that they feel supported so that they don't burn out on that journey. And I think you've described that you do that brilliantly.
yeah. Right. But I mean, we try our best, but I'm sure
Yeah.
there's, I'll be listening to some more of your episodes to get some more ideas for what we should be doing. But no, I mean, it's just, we're humans. We just need to take care of each other,
Yeah.
and encourage our teams to look out for each other. It's
Mm,
not always about, a manager spotting something with one of their team members. Teams look out for each other and support each other. I think that's is really good to encourage that.
yeah.
And you do that by getting people to know each other on a deeper level. If people know each other in a bit more detail, you go out for a drink or you do an activity together, you just get to know each other on
Exactly.
a different level, and you care more about each other. And if
Mm,
someone's got an issue, you'd probably notice it more. Or if you see that they're struggling with their work, then you're going to be more inclined to help them, because
mm,
whereas if they're just your random colleague that you just sit next to every day and you just do nothing but that
yeah.
stuff that comes across your desk,
Yeah.
that probably doesn't happen as much. So
Yeah.
it's I think it's much more important than even I think sometimes, but it
Mm.
is, yeah, it definitely is.
And I like you seem to be striking a balance between the kind of caring human side and also the technology side. You've talked a bit about AI and how that important that is. Um, and in the article, you talked about being future fit,
Mhm.
means investing more in more than just technology. But technology is really important. So you're you're talking about kind of investing in resilience and emotional intelligence, and you talk about ethical leadership and curiosity, and that's why when I read your article I was like, oh, I need to talk to you. Why do you think those things are so critical now? Is it because of what you said in terms of being able to help people kind of deal with whatever's to come in the future, even though we can't predict it, or is it more than that?
I think for us, it's important also because we're employee owned. So, the team that I work with are the future custodians of our business. So, we need to invest in the business, invest in them. It's their business going forward. I'm not going to be there. There'll be other people who aren't there. If if our business is going to survive in the long run, then we do need to invest in whether it's technology, um,
Mm,
or people. We've always been very keen to make sure that people are able to progress in the business. Not necessarily, quite often we have had people kind of move around into different roles, and progress in their careers like that. But also, it could be like helping, with projects and getting more involved in the business so that we have this kind of resilient business for the future where people are taking ownership. They know that they're the custodians of the future. Um, and as a relatively small business in this industry, there's lots of much smaller ones than us. There's kind of us in the middle, and then there's much larger businesses. We do have to invest,
Mm,
making sure that we're still there in 20 or 30 or 40 years' time for our clients
mm.
and for the people who own the business, which is all of us. So, sorry, did that answer your
It
question?
does. And I was just thinking in terms of, what you're describing is, it sounds like you've built kind of a learning culture where development is very much at the center of that. So,
Mm,
it's all about how you develop your people and how people continuously learn and um, so that they can be their best selves and the future of your business can be in its best place.
yeah.
I think that's a sharp contrast to some people who see kind of the learning and development as a bit of a tick box exercise. We're supposed to offer some kind of CPD stuff, but we'll just do that on one Friday a month just to tick that box. For you, it feels like it's a real mindset of yours. Do you think is that very much dependent on you being there? Or do you think that's something that when, you've been in 25 years, we were saying before we hit record, you don't think you're going to be necessarily in another 25 years time because that's a long time. Um, so how do you get something like that kind of development mindset to be something that's part of shared by people who work there? It's not just dependent on you driving that.
Well, I'm hoping it's the things I value and that I've kind of instilled in the business, which
Mm,
haven't all come from me. I mean, Tony Arrow founded the business and he had some very strong thoughts about how you should run a business and look after people. And a lot of what I do has very much been influenced by him.
mm,
And, he's not worked in the business for quite a number of years. And I'm hoping if I'm retired that the culture is still there, if
mm,
it's really embedded in the business in terms of how we do things and why we do them. It doesn't mean everything will stay that I think is important, but hopefully kind of the core culture of how we do things and why we do them and why it's important. I'm
mm.
hoping that that is like, the legacy that you leave
Yeah. Oh,
between
massively.
us, over time. So,
Yeah.
um, but there might be new people come in and do something completely different. But the kind of core, hopefully, is still there.
Yeah. And I think, cultures that sustain kind of high and consistent performance are those where learning and reflection and adaptability and so on are at the kind of core. And those are values and behaviors that shouldn't be dependent on one person. So, yeah, so things
Yeah,
change, but
yeah,
actually, fundamentally, that's what you've been leading and has obviously been working.
yeah.
And that's, yeah,
And I mean, learning. There's all. I'm just thinking about that. There's a whole range of things. I mean, for us, it might be actual, qualifications that are needed for a
yeah,
particular role. And all our staff have got their own training budgets and they can sort of use them as they wish. But also, people do lots of other training. So, lots of people have had individual coaching with different types of coaches depending on what their needs are. We do lots of group coaching. People have a personal training budget. Some of their training budget they can use on like personal development, which it might be something completely random. People have done all sorts of things, but and it's not necessarily developing them in a very specifically for their role at Wise, but it's developing them as a person,
yeah.
increasing their confidence, whatever it is. So I
Mm,
think it's just thinking a bit, trying to think as widely as possible about training people and for people to learn and they learn in different ways. And, how do we facilitate
mm.
that? I suppose. Yeah.
So, how do we facilitate that? And I guess thinking about then, what does this look like for leaders and managers in practice? Um, and you talked in your article about leaders needing clarity of purpose and the confidence to lead with both head and heart, which is something I talk a lot about in terms of, don't forget the heart bit just because
Mm.
your head's doing this.
Yeah.
Um, what does that look like? I mean, you've described actually quite a lot today in terms of how you show up and how you engage people and it's the true connection and through those relationships. But what else, is there anything else in terms of kind of the leadership behaviors that you think are really important to make sure that leaders are using their head and their heart?
Well, that's a really, how do I answer this? Well, firstly, it's really important because you can't run a business or have a successful business if you're just leading from either your head or your heart.
Yeah,
Um, well, you probably possibly can, but you're probably not getting
the
the
best.
best
Yeah.
out of the business or its people. So, um, yeah, I think, I mean, possibly sometimes I think I use my heart more than my head, perhaps in the way that I run a business. And that's not always going to work for every business, but that's what's important to me.
Mm,
Um, and actually, what I do is surround myself with other people in the business who have got a different, who come from a different angle, not completely different, because that would
but it
mean we're
balanced it out.
massive, but it balances. So, like the team at Wise are quite we come from quite different
Mm,
angles in lots of ways, but kind of our core is similar. So
mm,
it means we cover all those bases, I suppose. But we just have different people who are thinking about things in a slightly different way. I mean, that can cause issues if you're too different, but and we that happens. But yeah, it's just making sure that you have all the elements, whether
yeah.
that's in you as CEO or as a leader or in your managers or as a team, and you're using everyone's
Mm.
kind of skills and
But I,
individual.
but I like your observation, Alex, in terms of, you potentially lead more from the heart, because I think people in reality either lead more from one or the other. And it's
Yeah,
about recognizing that. And as you say, making sure that you balance that out with the people around you.
yeah,
Um, and that's fine. And if more people were more self-aware and then consciously thinking about who they've got supporting them so they have a balanced approach, I think that works really well.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I do like having a variety of people in the business with different mindsets and different experiences and skills and the way
Mm,
that they think about things. And yeah, I mean, absolutely. If I had a team, a kind of senior team who are all very similar to me,
no,
that wouldn't be a very good bit. It
no,
actually wouldn't
it
work very
wouldn't
well.
work. No.
Yeah, I think you do have to make sure that you think carefully about what's needed
Mm.
in a team.
So, if, you talked a lot about needing to adapt today, and we know that managers need to be adaptable. How how do you think we best support those managers to keep adapting to expectations and things that are changing quite quickly? Because that there's is one thing kind of thinking, well, we need to be adaptable, but then how do we make sure that we are or managers are able to particularly to be adaptable so that they are themselves feeling okay and then they can also support their own teams.
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I think if you have a good team who can support each other, so
Mm,
I mean, in a management team, you'll often have people with different, some who've been working in the industry for a long time, or some are
mm,
newer. I think the key is feeling that you have backup from other people in the team, so that I think, really nurturing your team and
mm,
getting them to support each other is really important because, as I said at the beginning, change is unsettling, and they. I think if you can build a team who can support each other,
yeah.
that's key. Because they then, when they need to support other people. Um, and that's difficult to do if you're just kind of in isolation, I think. I
Definitely.
mean, it might be your team or it might be external,
Mm.
getting some training or support because, I mean, these things aren't easy and people are complicated and, people get, we've had managers thrown in. We've got a new manager joining our management team who maybe hasn't done management before and having to support and deal with other people. So you do need training and support and just knowing that you can not have the answer and come and ask other people,
Yeah.
um, get
You're
support.
you're describing brilliantly how what I think is really important, which is that kind of the relational capabilities, that ability
Mm,
um, to listen, to communicate really well, to be able to make decisions with people, knowing the kind of bigger picture, and so it's all the stuff that you're describing is what I think is super important for managers now, and it's about the people skills of managing, and as you
mm.
say, not having
Yeah.
to know all the answers.
It's actually, I mean, managing people is a really difficult thing to do. I mean, we've got the day job, there's complicated things happening in our business, but actually managing people and dealing with people and different people and, it's really
Yeah.
hard.
Yes, it is hard, and it's I think it's one of those things that people kind of gloss over, and it's like
Yeah.
it's a title you have, and they don't actually think about how hard that is unless people are well prepared and they're developed. And even then, it's really hard. It's a continuous development
Yeah.
journey, and able to, people need space to kind of talk about how hard management is and what they need to make
Yeah.
it easier and so on.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So let's leave listeners with a reflection
Mhm.
that they can carry into 2026. So as we kind of, people think about the year ahead, what does better work really mean to you as you look to maybe 5, 10 years ahead?
So I think for us, it means, well, 5, 10 years ahead. Um, will take me slightly closer to retirement, I think.
Mhm.
So, in that time, I'm hoping we'll be prepared and we'll have all the right people within the business, which we already do, but develop those over time. We've got other senior people in the business who'll be probably retiring. So it's just need to make sure that we are prepared and that we're able to hand over things to the future custodians of Wise Investment because we're employee owned. So, it's the people who are there who are going to take over. Really culture is really important to us. So just making sure we embed culture really strongly, so that people feel that they have the skills and not just the skills to kind of run the business day to day, but to really look after it and make sure it thrives in the long term. Yeah,
Mhm.
I think
And I
that's
like that it's continuous, isn't it? So sometimes people talk about the future of work, and it's almost like they talk about it as a fixed destination,
mm,
and it's shaped by leaders intentionally preparing people to be able to grow and adapt and have that sense of belonging that you've described brilliantly today. Um, Thank you so much, Alex. That has whizzed by way too quickly.
thank you, Lisa.
I will make sure that your contact details are in the show notes, and there'll be a resource that will go alongside this episode. It will also be in the show notes for people to download. And I invite listeners to reflect on how prepared and how hopeful their organisation feels about the future for them. So thank you so much, Alex. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed listening to this conversation, there are 3 things I invite you to do. First, click the link in the show notes to download the resources for this episode. Secondly, help me extend the reach of this podcast by leaving a quick review on Apple or wherever you listen. And please share this episode with your colleagues so that you can discuss what resonates for your team. And finally, as usual, I invite you to reach out to me on LinkedIn or through my website so that we can keep the conversation flowing. I know listeners often say they're keen to implement some of the key takeaways, but sometimes find it tough without guidance or extra support. If that's you, drop me a line and let's chat. My brand spanking new website is live in January, ready for 2026. So be sure to check out itstimeforchange.co.uk, where you will find a whole heap more to support you to reflect on and develop your own practice. And while you're there, join my mailing list to stay up to date with bespoke support services like my retained partnerships, where I'm by your side through all things leadership, culture and performance. Feel free to reach out if you want to know more. I'm a great sounding board for challenges and ideas for development, so grab all the details you need from the show notes. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you and to welcoming you to the next episode coming soon. Join me then.